really for an arena horse, but I can saddle him up at 2 in the morning and jump on him and lope off into the distance and do what I need to do. And that to me is the mark of a broke horse. He's not as refined as he could be, but I'm fine with that. He's not really one that I need refinement on. I need trust. I need that broke relationship. And that's all a frame of mind. The other thing besides leadership is the pressure. I kind of talked about that a little bit ago. Again, going back to the thought about riding colts that have never ever been handled, they require lots and lots of time and patience. But when you get into that 8-year-old that has been across this wooden bridge 4,000 times and he still balks at it, it's time to shut the patience. It's time to get a little impatient, put a little more pressure on him. And I see that type of a horse far more frequently than the one that needs his hand held. There are lots of horses out there that need their hand held. Every horse is going to need that from time to time, but they don't need it all the time. Getting back to that parent-child relationship, I have a 5-year-old son, and we don't actually have a cookie jar. Let's pretend like we do. If I were to have that cookie jar with his favorite cookie in it, and I told him that if he were to go into that cookie jar, I was going to put him in timeout for 25 seconds. I'd be willing to bet that he would be willing to pay the 25 seconds to get his favorite cookie. At least sometimes he would. So this kind of brings me to that point about the patience and the tolerance. There comes a time when you need to get a little bit impatient. You need to start putting a little more heat on your horse, and you need to make the penalty a price he doesn't really want to pay. Again, I'm not talking about doing this with a really green colt that has legitimate fear issues, but I don't think that's what the majority of the world is riding. Now, likewise, I wouldn't take my 5-year-old son and he goes into the cookie jar. I wouldn't just rear back and punch him like a man either, you know. There needs to be some discretion in how we deal out a little bit of punishment. It also always needs to be cerebral. I wouldn't ever want to just get mad at my horse and go take it out on him and vent. That gets into that category of abuse, and that's not okay. But I just think there's an awful lot of room between the black line of abuse and the white line of over-coddling and feeding treats and all of these things that can kind of lead to a disrespectful horse. I've got a little thing or two to show y'all curling here. He is just a little sore behind me here. When you do get that good relationship with your horse, you get to do some pretty neat things with them. But until you really do become their leader, you will never have an animal that is trustworthy. I think that's the flip side of that coin. If I'm going to be a person that my horse can trust, then I also want to have a horse that is trustworthy. This is the first time I've ever done this on him, so let's see how this goes. I don't mean ride bridleless, I mean ride bridleless in public. Curly is a horse I really trust quite a bit. We've kind of had some wrecks together. I've put him in some spots that I probably shouldn't have put him into, and he's come through for me. And again, I think that leads to that relationship where not only do I have a horse that's trustworthy, but I can build that trust with him. If you think about like our special forces in the military, you don't make a Navy SEAL by giving them lots of vacations. You make a Navy SEAL by putting them in very, very difficult situations and getting through it successfully. And I could come in here on Curly, and he might decide that he wants to go a little too fast. And I could do one or two things when he goes too fast. I could say, Oh my God, we're going pretty fast. Woo. This is scary. Or I could say, you know what? We're in an arena. He can't really go anywhere. Yeah, that's what his issue is. He's hurting a little in the hind end. He makes that transition right to left. But we can go too fast. And if I'm going to be a leader, I have to handle a situation like this in a certain way. I can't freak out. I think one of the things that you might notice among the colt starters, we're all working a little bit differently, but there are some things we have in common. We haven't been freaking out. We're not giving the horse that message that we're scared. We're pushing the envelope with them a little bit. And if you just take those little things and build on them, you really can get to do some cool stuff with your horse. I was originally planning on bringing a colt over here to demo on, because it's my belief that most of the people that are trying to train their own horses, they get a pretty good idea of where to start, because these colt starting deals are pretty common these days, and you see everybody do just what we're doing. You see them get to make the first ride on a colt, but the next thing you see them do is get on their 10-year-old horse and show you the end of the road. You don't get to see what happened in the 8 years in between. So I kind of thought bringing a colt would be a good idea. So I'm going to take Curly here, and I'm going to pretend like he's a colt, and I figure because I'm bridleless, I'll be at enough of a disadvantage that I may have to treat him like a colt a little bit. I'm going to show y'all one of my very favorite little exercises. And there's two things I most commonly see people having trouble with in the handle of their horse. And one is stopping them. And I really don't know that I have enough time to do that justice. But the other thing is the turnarounds. And crossing around on their front end. The majority of horses that I see do what I call turn on their middle. Which means when they turn around, they move in their hind end as much as they're moving their front end, kind of like Curly is right here. And what they really should be doing is locking that hind end down. And so this is my little drill of how to get that stuff fixed and get them crossing over real nice in the front. I call this the purposeful circle. How's my time doing?
About 10 minutes.
Okay. One of the guys that I used to work for told me something that became a very valuable piece of information, and that was that when you get your horse broke, you should be able to trot a little 8-foot circle. And pretty much all horses can trot an 8-foot circle, physically. So if you can't trot an 8-foot circle, your horse isn't quite broke. Now I'll start this out at a walk, but what I want to do, I'm using both feet. I'm really riding my horse like railroad tracks. I'm alternating. If y'all can see me kind of rocking back and forth, I'm exaggerating a bit. But I'm using both legs in him, and what I'm going to do is take that inside leg out, add a little more outside, and just screw that circle down. But I don't want to do this too fast. I want to take it nice and slow at first, and that'll get that horse really crossing over in that front end. And of course, we're going to do this in both directions. So we'll do our little circle here to the right, both legs in, and then we'll take the inside out, and he'll just come right on around. Again, I don't advise really going fast at this until things have gotten really proficient. Generally speaking, it takes me about a month of riding a horse 4 or 5 times a week before they get fairly proficient at this little circle where I'm ready to speed it up. When we get a little bit better at it, then I'm going to try to turn it into a figure 8. take a horse bridless, and I can do a little 8-foot circle, figure 8. That's a pretty good little exercise right there. You see how he's crossing over pretty well on that front end? Again, you wouldn't take this too fast. Alright. Since I have a little more time, I will get it to stop just a little bit. One thing I do want to say, kind of in the same vein as those other things that get said quite often, there are a couple of phrases that get thrown out there along with colts that are the beginnings of the road, but the second part of them doesn't ever get said. And I think there are some things to watch out for. They kind of become traps. It's sort of in that vein of moderation. Too much of something can be as bad as too little. One of those things is untracking the hindquarters. There's certainly value to it. The value of it, though, is teaching the horse how to move his hindquarters. Practically speaking, we don't want a horse traveling around with his hindquarters untracked. That's a problem. What we really want is a horse traveling around with his hindquarters more toward the inside of the circle. That is how we build collection, and we get into a lot of other maneuvers. What got me talking about this is the stop. If you untrack your horse a whole lot to the point where when you want to ride him off and you pull on his face, his first step is over with his hip, in my opinion, you have made a somewhat of an error there, and it's going to cause you a whole lot of work to fix somewhere down the road, or it's going to cause some of your maneuvers to not work out correctly. Pulling on their nose can be another thing. Talking about a horse following his nose. If your horse follows his nose, you're going to have some issues with leg aids, and something like counter arc in a circle like this won't be possible for a horse who has been taught to follow his nose, or it's going to become a fight when you try to get there. Breaking into pole is kind of another one of those. Do y'all know how a horse's eye works? Do y'all know how unique a horse's eye is? Let me tell you a neat thing about a horse's eye. Humans have muscles inside of our eyes that flex and contract the lens, and that's how we focus at different distances. A horse does not have that type of a mechanism. Their eye, the actual lens, is thicker at the bottom than it is at the top. So for a horse to see different distances, they literally have to tilt their head. It's like having bifocal glasses on. You have to look through that little window at the bottom. And if you think about a herd of horses out in the pasture, and something spooks them way off in the distance, what do? They all pick that head up, stick that nose out real straight, don't they? What they're doing is looking at it. You take a colt in an arena and you go to cross a tarp for the first time, what is he going to do? He's going to put his head down there, real close to it, right? He's looking at it. The take-home message here is, if you take your horse, and now don't get me wrong, I want them soft in the face, I don't want to pick up my reins and feel them running their nose out. But if you get them where they are always riding on the vertical, you have essentially confined the area that he can see. And if you spend all your life in an arena, that's probably okay. But if you want to go trail riding or something like that, I suggest you don't walk too close to the edge of cliffs and such. Another thing, my background is in cut and working cattle. And if you ever look at a photo of a cutting horse, he's never going to be working the cow broke at the pole. That's because he couldn't see him in that manner. It's not to say that those horses aren't broke, that they don't have any feel in their face. It's just getting it to the degree that it's a default setting. And I see some people doing that. 100% of the time they're riding their horse, they've got him right here and broke at that pole. And I think it's important to be able to get your horse soft there and to be able to hold him should you choose to hold him, but you should be able to put your hand down and relax and have him turn his head to a more natural setting, like Curly's doing right here. Another one of those little pitfalls that kind of goes with breaking at the pole is getting a horse's head low. There's two particular colts that always I think of when I do that. This fella had decided he wanted to train his own colts and turn them into reining horses, and he got on them after about 30 days, and he went to teaching them slide and stops, which is a little early in the game to work on slide and stop. But he went to really getting that horse's nose on the ground, and when you go to stop them, they literally would just about touch their nose to the dirt. When y'all see a finished reining horse or something that's got a real nice stop and a low headset, he didn't start that way. He was what trainers call elevated. They originally were kind of, it depends on the independent horse and how their balance works out. There's an awful lot of colts that initially, to teach them how to move their feet and balance, you actually have to lift. You have to pick their head up and get that weight shifted, particularly colts that are more front-ended. If you're constantly teaching him to put his head down, I promise you your horse isn't stopping right. He can't move around in a collected manner because his weight's in the wrong spot. So that would be one of those things I would kind of advise y'all to watch out. Again, having a horse, where I can just sit here, hopefully he's relaxed and he's got his head in a pretty natural low position. But if that head's starting to get below their withers, you're really putting him at a physical disadvantage, just the way his balance works out. And this is all, I'm strictly speaking for more high performance kind of maneuvers here. I'm really kind of out of stuff to say, which is very unique for me. Usually they're having to shut my microphone off and let the orchestra kick up. So I guess I'll field some questions if I've got Mr. Howard, I have a couple minutes left. Or?
Yeah, 3 minutes.
Okay, does anybody have any questions, comments, thoughts? No? Okay. Well, let me ask y'all this. How are y'all enjoying the colt start? They going pretty well? I don't think if you went to 100 of these, you would ever see one quite like this one. I know all of us are well behind where we thought we would be right now. And I think that's a great thing for this sole reason. You've got 3 guys here that are in a competition which could cause us to go faster than we need to do, try things that we don't need to do. And I think all of us have shown some restraint with our colts. And I think that's probably a better thing for y'all to watch than somebody who took their colt, stood up in the saddle, and cracked a bullwhip on him. Watching a guy not get where he wants to, but still do the right thing for the horse is a pretty good object lesson, I think. So I really want to commend my other 2 colt starting competitors. I see Dr. Gotti up there. I think it's a real good group of guys. I think y'all are getting to see some pretty outside the box stuff as far as colt starting competitions go. And I don't know how it's going to wind up, but if I wind up in 3rd place behind 2 such gentlemen as Ethan and Dr. Gotti, I don't think I'll be disappointed one bit. I think it's a great competition, and I don't think anybody's going to leave a loser, particularly those 3 really. All right, well, I'm going to relinquish the mic here.
Our next speaker is Dr. Joe Gotti, and Joe's going to do this without a horse. That's how good he is.
Good morning. So, wasn't Daniel really good with his demonstration and his philosophy? Yeah, I'm a college professor, so y'all take notes. There'll be a short quiz at the end. First thing I need to ask you is, did you see what you saw? These guys are really good at starting colts. We left here, my wife and I went shopping over at the mall, and I was worried about getting dehydrated. There was this little liquid refreshment place there in the mall. So I stopped in. They had a robot bartender. I thought it was amazing. The first thing he said is, "What would you like to drink?" I told him. He said, "What's your IQ?" I said, "I have about 160. So he started talking about nuclear fusion and the Pythagorean theorem. And I drank my cold drink and got kind of curious. So I left and turned around and came right back in. He said, "What would you like to drink?" I told him. He said, "What's your IQ?" I said, "About 100. He started talking about the weather and fishing. I said, "Well, this is what I drank that drink too." I said, "This is pretty good." I went out, came back in one more time. He said, "What would you like to drink?" I told him. He said, "What's your IQ?" I said, 50. He said, "How about them LSU Tigers?" But seriously, on the drive to the mall, my wife and I were talking about the demonstrations, and she said, "Well, do you think they understand what you're doing?" And I said, "Well, darling, it's kind of like these codes. You're going to start with where they are." She said, "Well, yeah, but a lot of times you were just standing there not doing something." I said, "Yeah, I know, but not doing something was doing something." She said, "Well, I don't know if they'll understand that." I said, "That's okay. They don't have to. They will someday."